Welcome back to here at Goldberg. Today we'll be talking about armies in the Ukraine. It's a difficult subject on account of the fact that there's so much bad information in circulation, and the so-called fact checkers are the ones distributing the corrupt data. So you might have heard of 13 soldiers on Snake Island. They said, a few Russian warship, and were slaughtered. You had Reddit, you have Twitter, mainstream media, emotional pilling about this. Turns out they may in fact have surrendered and became POWs. But there's no correction, there's no, oh, we have to retract. Nah, because they want a larger conflict. It's good for ratings, and it's good probably for their own weird power elite fantasies. Another segment had this guy called Samuel Heed. He was flying around, destroying Russian MiGs in bowls of methane gas, buttloads. And we know that's true because Adam Kinzinger retweeted it. There are vehicles and pictures that some say it's Ukraine, some say it's Russia, some say this is actually from Afghanistan. So you have to be very careful. And it just makes you wonder, in the age of camera phones, instant communication, social media, if it's so easy to gaslight millions of people, what does that maybe suggest about past events? Just food for thought. So I think that Ukraine is more of a symptom of a larger problem, which is boomer denial about the state of the world in their own countries. I'm going to focus more on the United States in this video, but Russia is no exception. And so let's get started. In the simplistic dichotomy of many Westerners, if you don't wholeheartedly endorse soy liberalism, that means that you want Putin. And it's just a stupid way of trying to frame it. I believe Ukraine should have remained as an independent state. Be nationalistic to the extent that you want to be strong economically, develop without turning into some globalist puppet and flooding your country with migrants, which they were already starting to do, my understanding is. But Putin himself, he's not, as Lauren Witzke would say, a Christian nationalist, so we should support him. He's, in some respects, a Russian nationalist. He's trying to safeguard Russian security interests by not being right up against NATO, by having some degree of separation. But he is not trying to save Europe and save white people in any significant way. I mean, I guess he's anti-power bottom with his legislation, but that's not exactly preventing the hordes from entering Europe. In fact, he has a large Chechen Muslim contingent that's part of his military. And Russia is multi-ethnic anyway. It's been for a long time. The guy who's in line to succeed Putin, the defense minister, he is half Tuvan. There's a lot of Asians in Russia, so people have this misperception that he's trying to be the one who will prevent the decline of the West. I don't believe so. And I don't think that many of these clowns in the United States would really want to live under a Russian legal system. All right, so if you were involved in that whole hoedown throwdown last year in D.C., in Russia, you probably would have been sent to a labor camp for 10 years. They're very harsh, still a Soviet-style penal system. So people need to actually do more investigation, not just say, I don't like Joe Biden and LGBT, therefore Putin is great. That's a little bit stupid. Russia is a kleptocracy. It has its own problems, and that's why we have to recognize what's going on. But we really pivot more so towards the American side. I should note, some people are saying, well, will this become World War III? It is possible, hopefully not. We should pray it goes in the opposite direction. Some claim he's going to go into Finland, and he could probably steamroll Finland. I don't think they have a large military. I could be wrong about that. And then Sweden, which would be kind of hilarious to see a post-Soviet commissar running Sweden. It might be better for Sweden. Finland's not that screwed up, but, Sweden definitely is. And who knows, you'd have some of those people hiding out there. They might put Yogi Zero Abs in a gulag. My God, that'd be terrible. So it is a delicate situation. I could see this happening, which is that neocons have some plan to instigate an event that will escalate so they can turn it into nuclear war, because a lot of them want that. They're not happy unless people are dying, especially European people are dying. So it remains to be seen. Now this is where we have to address the boomer question, because Obviously, to some extent, Putin is denying the reality about his own country by going after Ukraine. War is an ideal form of a masquerade to block against other problems. But our elites as well, our boomers, and you have the left-wing people who are kind of engaged in this schizophrenic nationalism where they hate most of the guys who represent the United States in its past and are the ones who overwhelmingly make up the combat arms branches of the military. And they're saying, we hate you and we're trying to replace you and demonize you, but you should be willing to fight for us and our soy liberal idea. Then you've got the right-wingers who vacillate between, oh, it's not our role, we shouldn't be there, don't get involved, and Biden lost Ukraine. Which one do you want? I saw Gorka, simping for Zelensky. I'm like, dude, this is just nonsense. But in reality, here's what's happening. The children of the World War II generation, those born in the 40s, 50s, 60s, not so much 70s, although Cuco Rubio is a spiritual boomer, they have this narrative of their parents defeating the Nazis, and then there was the Cold War, but by the early 90s, Soviet Union had fallen apart. So America's number one, unipolar, end of simping. Everyone's going to be a liberal democratic capitalist. It's just a matter of time. You can't hold out. You authoritarians are over with. That was the assumption. So naturally, once you reach that perch, you start making investments in yourself to ensure that you continue thriving and developing. H.W. Bush was not a bad president in this regard. He did a lot of stuff on the domestic level that was useful. Even Billy Boy Clinton. There was a reform agenda in the 90s, and then it got derailed because he got head from a fat Care Bear chick. And then the Bushes come in, because that whole thing, the Clinton impeachment, that's a uniquely American thing. No other country that I am aware of would waste so much time trying to go after a guy because some chick blew him. Even if he lied about it, it's like, okay, well, yeah, of course you're going to lie about it. Most politicians lie. Many of them lie under oath. That's not the reason to abandon your progress towards strengthening your country as it's in this position, of being a global player. But boomers don't get it, probably because these boomers, they didn't go through the hardship of the World War II generation. They're lower IQ, regardless of how educated they are, and thus they have birthed this disaster in the 21st century. You certainly see it with the Bush administration. No desire to work together, no investment in the United States. It's cut taxes on Wall Street, do No Child Left Behind, Medicare Part D. These are all basically handouts to donors. Start wars in the Middle East, which, according to Jonah Goldberg, every 10 years or so we got to go and just knock around these little countries and show them who's boss. Essentially, let's just kill people to say that we're still the top dog. Meanwhile, China has been investing in education, in development, and infrastructure, but everything in the United States has become politicized. That's the problem with boomers. You saw this with the Obamacare negotiations. Obama took essentially a plan that was pretty similar to the Heritage Foundation one from the 90s. And healthcare is usually a relatively uncontroversial issue in countries because it's for the good of the whole country. It's a national interest to have a more functioning healthcare system. Instead of the Republicans saying, okay, let's negotiate, we want expanded HSAs, we want to eliminate the lines around the states, we want to maybe instead of making it mandate tax, let's make a $500 tax credit if you have proof of insurance. These are all market favoring things, incentives, right? Instead they said, it's socialism, it's going to kill grandma, and they campaigned against it for 7 years. They have no plan to replace it. Even when they take the majority in 2011, they're like, we got to cut spending. So Obama's like, let's cut spending. This is another national issue. You got too much debt. Well, we simply cannot go along with any tax increases. That was Eric Cantor. So they don't operate in good faith because they want to politicize everything. They don't want the other side to have any credit. And this is a significant problem. So Trump comes in 2017 and it's the same deal. Well, we don't do infrastructure as Republicans. So they spend a year trying to cut taxes. Democrats don't want to help them out, as usual, playing the same game. 2018, they're like, well, we better just sit here and wait till we lose the majority. They do the bipartisan Let Criminals Out of Prison Act early. And then no other progress. They take control. They don't want to help out with drug pricing reform. They're not interested in doing infrastructure because that would give him some credits. Although, yeah, they all rallied together to cut checks during the pandemic. And that's essentially it. The only thing that they can do on a bipartisan basis, if you notice, is cut huge checks to inflate the currency, or ratify stuff like Juneteenth as a holiday, or passing overwhelmingly condemnation for anti-care bearism. That's the only thing they can do in a functional way for the national interest. And this is becoming a crisis. Biden comes in, he has the rescue package, then he says, let's do infrastructure. This is a national issue. Once in a generation, make the investments. Do the Republicans try to work with him? Not for the most part. Oh, politicize this, politicize that. And so, yeah, some of them voted for it, but it still became this issue where even if it really is going to benefit a large swath of the country, it's always turned into it's only for 50%, which that's not effective if you're trying to be a global power. I hate to tell you. It's even the case with Build Back Better. They go, oh, this is socialism. Well, you say we need to stand up against China. But even though you criticize, let's say, Afghanistan, they don't have education for women. But we have education in the United States, albeit you have to become a debt slave to attain it in many cases. Why not say we'll cover it for those who pursue STEM programs at the community college level, not for non-citizens, and that will give us, an edge versus China, instead of the Mike Lee solution. Yeah, let's colonize our country with a bunch of Indian and Chinese H-1Bs to create a new managerial elite. That's the conservative solution, is never to actually invest in their own people, but to complain about how their own people are being left behind. It's kind of political autism, if you ask me. And then Biden might come back and go, all right, the border is a national issue too. Democrats know this. We're going to put the border wall money in the Build Back Better bill. We're going to negotiate this. Maybe we'll also pass Kate's Law separately. So that will permit us to advance in a unified way as Americans, instead of everything having to be politicized, because it's dangerous. You want to say, we're going to still remain the top dog like all these boomers believe, but they're not willing to make the investments to work together to ensure that occurs. And whenever you hear them like, what we need is we need an Eisenhower. Do you know who Eisenhower was, by the way? Eisenhower was, of course, commander in the European theater during World War II. He's a 5-star general, president of Columbia University. Then he was elected president. But Eisenhower was not what a lot of neocons believe. In fact, it was Operation Vulture. There was a plan to use nuclear weapons in relation to Vietnam to help the French. And Eisenhower was like, what the hell is the matter with you people? You already dropped 2 bombs on Japanese. And if you've watched the documentaries, I mean, it's really horrendous stuff. And they didn't just target the military. They specifically went and destroyed a bunch of civilians. They just wanted to prove that they were, oh yeah, we got the power, we can use it. But Eisenhower, he was a conservative Republican. He was for lower taxes. He actually had a couple of budget surpluses. But he also said we need a federal interstate program. We need to have strong infrastructure if we're going to be a strong nation. He also proposed something that was like an earlier version of Obamacare, private-public partnerships, with the idea it's for the good of the whole country. And until these boomers start realizing that you have to march in step, in fact, I don't think they're capable of it. I think they're just too low IQ in general. They're too wrapped up in their fantasies where they think that everyone's just going to, kiss our ring because we're America without any sacrifice, because the boomers didn't have to sacrifice, unless some of them went to Vietnam, I understand, but many of them did not. They dodged the draft. These people are incapable of managing a global American position without, let's say, the specter of a Soviet bloc. That's why they're so giddy about fighting Russia, because it's like, oh, it's like the good old days. It's a very silly decision. I would liken the United States to the Ottoman Empire, not to Rome, right? We're over-leveraged, and that's ultimately what destroyed the Ottoman Empire. It was money. It was not a military defeat per se, although, of course, they were on the losing side in World War I. But that's the takeaway from Ukraine. It's not so much, oh yeah, Russia doing this, Russia being based. Of course, we know Putin is in denial about his own country's decline. But you're going to probably see more of this. You're going to see more lashing out, more of this kind of denialism. If you want America to remain strong, which I think we are in decline, but we can have an effective managed decline and we can come out of it a strong country, if not an empire. but not with boomers. So stop voting for boomers, even if they're conservative. Stop voting for them. That is the important message.